What is up, everybody? Solomon here. Super excited to be with Genfinity, interviewing multitudes of builders across Web3. Today, I have one of the most notable builders in all of Web3, which is Fabian Vogelsteller. Fabian, multiple contributions within the Ethereum ecosystem with the Mist browser, Ethereum Wallet, Web3.js, ERC20, the ICO wave, which bootstrapped pretty much this entire industry. Notably, Fabian is the founder and chief architect at LUKSO. That being said, without rambling, let me get the ball rolling here. Well, Fabian, we certainly appreciate you taking time out of your day to join us. Always like to start these out with a little bit of a background or an intro. Can you maybe tell us just a brief, because I know we can probably go down the rabbit hole for a full hour with this, but a brief overview of your history within the Ethereum ecosystem, your contributions, and why you found that it was fundamentally necessary to launch LUKSO?
And basically, my history started in crypto in 2013 when I heard about Bitcoin. And I was lucky enough to be in the beginning when there was no altcoins, and then the altcoin wave came. So I saw this happening. I saw how basically everything came into this play. After people try to experiment a lot, right? And in 2015, I joined the Ethereum Foundation as the lead app developer. And like you said, I worked on the Mist browser, which was the first Web3 browser. It was also the first wallet for Ethereum. I worked on tools like Web3.js, which is the library developers use to interact with smart contracts. I proposed ERC20, which was basically a draft from Vitalik, and I put it in a proper format. And yeah, hence everything else started from that. It kind of was like what really accelerated Ethereum into what it is today. But yeah, so the thing is, how things happen in Ethereum is it was basically just us figuring out how smart contracts can work and what we can do and what are the basic building blocks, and how do we build a wallet and how do we interact with apps and d-apps and stuff like this. So it was all very novel, but there was not a lot of thought that was put into those standards or into anything that happened besides obviously the bare bone tech. That was where the thoughts went. Standards. I mean, with ERC20, I introduced the idea of that you need to standardize smart contracts, so we all agree on how a token works or how whatever other protocol works, so that you can build interfaces that work with this stuff. So there was no experience in 2015 when the Ethereum launched in July 31st of 2015. ERC20 was proposed in November, if I remember right, 2015. The whole thing started to explode with the ICO wave in 2016. There was just pretty much 4, 5, 6 months running of this chain, before there was anything. So there was no prior experience of how things should be done. And kind of what brought me, into the idea of doing LUKSO, it was the idea of, on the one hand, creating a blockchain more focused to lifestyle and, social and normie use cases, bringing it away from the finance, bringing it more towards the normie space. And that was really the contribution of Marjorie with her idea of, the lifestyle fashion world, using, NFTs and digitals and all of these things. But the real important idea for me was about making blockchain social, making blockchain normal, user friendly, and specifically, making use cases that are outside of the finance, because blockchain can work as an arbiter for a global society. It is literally the base layer that we need for a proper global society. And in order to do that, we need to be able to use it, right? And as probably most people know, using blockchain is not especially easy. I mean, it's easy if you just have a wallet and you want to just send some coins around. Even then, it's kind of complicated. But if you want to really have a long-lasting account that you care about, an identity, a profile, blockchain is not for that yet. Until now, until LUKSO. And this is what we did. Is we basically built the first smart contract account that's fully standardized. And that's at the core of LUKSO. So LUKSO is an Ethereum twin but it has a smart contract account standardized by default. It has the token standards improved and made better. And all of this built in such a way that it works together. And in this case, it was thought out before, and made holistically to work together, and not just, was a thing on the go where we needed to figure things out just because everybody wanted to make tokens in 2015. So, or colored coins, how it was called at the time.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, a lot more thinking went into those foundations, and hence why LUKSO is basically the blockchain for, decentralized social, because every wallet, if you create a universal profile, your wallet is a profile, and your wallet is also your smart contract account, and it's user manageable, and it's a foundation building block for that kind of future.
Totally. I want to kind of segment this because I'm really looking at kind of the foundations of what you guys have here. There's so many different ways we could go. So what I'm going to try to do in this interview is kind of tackle it from, here's blockchain adoption problems. Here's how LUKSO is solving those problems for mass adoption. Then we'll get into the future and some other aspects. And you have really, I think, critically essential viewpoints on the fundamental problems with where we're at with like mass adoption and blockchain, just based on talking to you a couple of times. So I would love if you could maybe inform the audience, and we could have a whole interview just on this, what some of the primary challenges of blockchain adoption are right now. And how you feel like kind of LUKSO does address some of these challenges. I guess one of the things that interested me when we talked a little while ago is that since 2009, all the innovation that occurs, there's never been really any meaningful innovation surrounding just the core level of user experience and onboarding and what normally happens. 40 different wallets, 40 different identities, 40 different things, 1,000 different chains. Like, what do you think kind of is at the root level of the adoption problems that we're facing? Because we certainly have not reached critical mass for mass adoption.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good point that you're bringing. And I mean, it's kind of like the way I see it, it's like Rails, the standards, and specifically in this case, ERC20 as a standard, it's like a rail, I mean, once, okay, people agree on this as a basic building block, and people build wallets, that can now understand these tokens. Yeah, it sets a direction. And now everything that came after that, ICOs, money raising through tokens, DeFi, let's trade it, let's wrap it, let's replicate, let's issue it, let's mint it, whatever it does, basically everything is basically just the direction is set, because now it's a token. Now everything is going in the direction of token or more tokens and tokenization, which is a great learning. And it's basically something that, this space experimented a lot. But because it is just one building block and one rail that you set, that means now basically, the innovation pretty much, we get more of everything, right? We get more details and more DeFi and more whatever and more wallets, like you say, but it's not going to be extremely crazily different. I mean, even things that were in the social space, like Friendster and Lens with the NFTs as profiles, it's still very token focused, right? So, and I think this is, the biggest problem we have in the space is, you interact with a private key, and then you make on top of this private key your account. So a private key has two problems. A private key is a password that has an account address where you store your assets on. You can't change the password, because otherwise your account address would be a different one. So you have a different address then, right? So you're literally stuck with this address, and you're stuck keeping that secure. So that makes kind of like a long-lasting account pretty much impossible, because you might not want to keep the exact same private key forever. I mean, you could never lose a device or never, get your friends by, like, you need to be very careful about it. And the other thing is that you can't store any information at an EOA, right? It's just an address on the blockchain. There's no information that you can attach to it. Hence why, Lens, for example, makes this NFT thing. So you have a picture and stuff, or, in ENS, you have ENS. But it always kept then the information storage, like, for example, your ENS name, separate from the actual account that's interacting on chain. And when you keep them separate, the problem is, once the user switches the EOA, right, to another one on your ENS, now your whole history is lost. Everything you issued, every token you issued, every NFT you made, whatever you did is gone. It's on the other address, and now it's a new address here that points to the same ENS name. So you lose this provenance, you lose the authenticity, you basically lose transparency, right? So
it's almost like, I'm curious if you think that, like, with the amount of, like you say, it's like this just tokens for the sake of tokens and propagating, just rolling downhill, more tokens, more wallets, more passwords, more this. And it seems like as the space is innovated, it's gotten further and further away from empowering people. And it's more so just more things. Here's more things. And it's like further away from identity, further away from experience.
I mean, this is how things go everywhere, like when electronic music came, I mean, the amount of like electronic music songs you have is crazy. And 90% of them sound pretty much the same, right? Like the innovation was in the 80s or in the 90s when this kind of stuff formed. But since then, it's kind of like just deviations of the same. So it's very tricky to actually bring novel innovation. And but once you have novel innovation, what you do is you create a new path. You create a new traction that now people can build endlessly in a certain direction. And that's basically what we did with universal profiles, or with the smart contract account on LUKSO, which, fun fact, comes out of a standard that I proposed in 2017, which is called ERC 725. And actually ERC 725 is I called it back in the day, proxy account, smart contract account, whatever. People called it the Ethereum identity standard. And the fun fact is that it's separated into actually two standards. It's Y, which is a key value store that you can attach information to your account, and X, which is the part that can execute generically, like it can call out smart contracts and stuff. And fun fact, like I just called it Y because I thought it was funny, because Y is like asking a question. So you ask a question, so you want to retrieve an answer, data, right? And X because of execute, but it's also the human chromosomes.
Yeah.
But that actually only I noticed later. So so it's like a person, I mean, your smart contract account is like a person. It's like your persona in a way. And this is the foundation of universal profiles. We build a lot more standards that, a key manager, for example, that gives you levels of permission, a universal receiver, so you can basically be reacting to incoming assets and all kind of stuff. So there's a lot of standards, but the foundation is ERC 725, X and Y in its core. And when you have a smart contract account, and it's not a token nor an NFT, it's an actual smart contract account that can hold information. Now we define a new trajectory, because now people can literally innovate on what information do I store in an account that should be smart contract readable, or that could be website readable. What could be attached to people's accounts if we can just attach anything? What protocols could we build if we can read out data from a user's profile on chain? If the account can automatically react on incoming stuff, what could we automate now? Could we build a decentralized follower system, a reputation system? Could we make like a friend auto connecting system? You could come up with the most crazy ideas, So now people can innovate that route, this new track down. And that's what LUKSO is about, giving this new chain, this new layer one, but with the right building blocks that were thought out over a few years now and built out, so that people can innovate in a whole new direction, innovate in the social space, in the network state ideas, all the regen, all the C-gen, how I call it, the creative generation or creative degens, the C-gen and the regen, they can do stuff now, and it can be completely exploding in this direction. And that's exciting, and that's interesting to see this, and not even more of the same, right?
Yep. No, I think, one thing that I think always happens in the digital asset, the crypto space, blockchain, is that we assume that like this space is so big and all this other stuff, but it's still really kind of small and native. And one thing I always find really interesting is if it's a little bit of a longer question tied into, kind of the social, the cultural, and kind of the creator kind of driven aspects of LUKSO here, is that if you look at Web2 traditional brands, if you look at Web2 traditional influencers, if you look at Web2 culture, if you look at Web2 artists and gamers that haven't taken the leap into crypto and blockchain yet, and that is the vast majority, I would say probably 99%, maybe even more than 99%. Billions of people not in blockchain, most that are fans, that have a vested interest in these brands and entertainers and musicians, whatever it is. I've got a ask myself, because they're so close to coming into blockchain. Like it seems like such a natural fit, but they haven't taken the leap. So I have to ask, what's the missing link? And then you've talked about this before. We always talk about killer app. Do you think that do you think decentralized social and what you guys have laid the foundations for is the killer app for blockchain, like actually tying everything together in ways that make sense?
I mean, I'd certainly say this is the next phase of exploration. It's the next, undiscovered land.
Yeah.
But I mean, what really holds them back is the ability that they were not able to manage their account. It was not even an account, it was a wallet, right? It was a single private key, single password thing with no information attached to it. So obviously that's not something that they long lasting want to build a reputation on, right?
Or 50 different wallets or 60 different wallets, you know what I mean? Which is crazy.
Yeah, it's unmanageable. I mean, it's unmanageable not only as a user, but it's also unmanageable for a brand. So if you're a brand, you want to create a reputation from the same address forever. That's real on-chain provenance. That's like you have to be the same address for the next 10 years. So that means your address needs to be recoverable. You need to have permission systems, maybe different role-based systems and departments, and access control of all kinds of sorts. That stuff you couldn't build, on an EOA, obviously. And even the current smart contract accounts, that have been developed so far are even very far away from that. We have built that. It took 5 years to think this through. So we have a version of, we have the account, the foundational account that's working with a key manager with permission system that allows you already to do a lot. That means, for example, you can have now multiple devices. You could even have an intern that can only talk to a mint contract and can do certain things, and you can kick him out later. You could say there's another controller address that can talk through the profile and can, direct the treasury. You can already restrict, actions based on which address they can interact with. And then anybody could now build a completely enterprise level, permission system in front of a universal profile. And now you can have role-based systems and spending limits and whatever people want to envision. You can put a Gnosis safe in front and you have a multi-sig. You can use a universal profile as a DAO. You can use it as an organization, as a brand. So that gives you this long-lasting identity that's actually properly manageable. So that's step number one. And then step number two is these creatives, they have maybe dropped an NFT here and there, but their people, their users couldn't use it, right? If so, it was in an isolated app where they claimed something, and then they couldn't move it out of there, or you had to again bring them down the rabbit hole of seed phrases and wallets, and that's where then their audience was then lost. So you have the problem that the friction was hard, and then there's no reason to really even care on chain, right? But once you have cool things to happen, like DAOs forming, communities forming, voting happening on chain, basically all the cool stuff that literally could not be done in a Web2 social platform, for example, and it happens on chain, you have to have a profile. And as a creator, you have to have a profile. And on top of this, when there will be platforms where you can decentralize monetize as a content creator, you have to have a universal profile too. You will have to have an on-chain account. Otherwise, you can't receive payments. Otherwise, you can't, as a fan, for example, if you're like a musician, right? You can, for example, right now, go to LUKSO, create your universal profile, go to Universal Swaps, create a token, for your fan base. And then soon we will actually release an airdrop tool. And then you can just drop it to your audience, or build a little website where they can claim it when they come to your concert or whatever. And then you can later see, okay, yeah, you have more than 5,000 of my tokens, come backstage. I mean, this stuff is fairly simple. That's not even the complex ideas. This is the bare bone things that you pretty much can do right now. And that's when you start to really care, because when your profile and your wallet has a face, that's when you care. That's when you tried it out yourself, right? And so now it becomes something that you like to revisit and you like to.
I'm 100% going to go in and mess around and customize my universal page through my universal it's cool actually, going in and what I've kind of come to believe with what's kind of what you guys have kind of built foundationally is it's an actual kind of it's not really a wallet. It's not really, even you could take it a step further. I take it a step further than a profile. It's more so there's all these catchphrases in crypto like phygital and tokenization and all this stuff that we hear. I look at kind of the experience that I've had with what you guys have built on LUKSO as kind of an actual phygital identity more so. It's like my ability to kind of live on chain in the way that I kind of want to.
Yeah, and it's universal because you're in all the apps the same person. It's the same. I mean, you can have multiple profiles, obviously, if you want anonymity, but you are now having one account across the different apps that support universal profiles, and you can transact. And that changes everything because right now on the internet, you don't have an account. You have an access to a platform that doesn't belong to you, that they can cut you out at any second they want to. And you can't transact, if they prevent you to. So we're combining the blockchain wallet with an actual internet identity, plung, and once you have one, and it's a decentralized network. LUKSO has 140,000 validators running it. It's small and it's young, but it's already highly decentralized. We are not running validators. We never have. In fact, we didn't even do it at the start. This stuff doesn't get shut down anymore because it's a decentralized network. So it's very interesting what will happen once people uncover and realize this.
I think you were alluding to some of this, and I would love your viewpoints. I mean, if you look at what most of us use right now to interact with, like kind of the platformification of society on these very kind of, okay, so like, look, thinking about like where crypto and crypto community kind of exists right now, you can look at like Twitter, and Twitter is very, if you don't know what the product is on a platform that you're using, and you can't see a revenue model, and you're not buying a product, then at the end of the day, you're like, everybody using Twitter is the product that's being sold. And you look at TikTok, it's the same thing. Instagram, the same thing. I mean, how do you envision what you guys have here with decentralized social and kind of the foundations being laid on LUKSO as kind of fundamentally changing the way that users engage with platforms or projects or whatever they want to, but then their data like inherently becomes like, that's really where the ticket is here, is like taking the power away from all these other platforms that use your data and monetize it, and being able to monetize it yourself.
I mean, the thing is, this has been talked about since a while, but it actually goes way further than that. If the account is not anymore on the platform, what platforms become is windows. So the attention economy, that's what you're talking about. It's not going away, right? If you have a great window, if you have a great website, and you have a great window, you still can have ad revenue and whatever, attention economy. But the actual data, your posts, your transactions, whatever you do, that is not owned by that window anymore, right? The app is not controlling it. That sits on the blockchain. And the difference what we build versus something like Lens or so is we build it's a generic EVM. It's like Ethereum. On top of this, people have now these profiles, which is just a smart contract standard, which also, by the way, works on every other chain potentially too. But on LUKSO, everybody got and uses the new standard, so everything is very nicely cohesive and interoperable, and like it has all the bells and whistles because you don't have the baggage of the past. But now, anybody can invent any idea they have that could tie into such a decentralized network. So it's not about us having now built a smart contract tool that can do 10 things, and there are 10 social things you can do. You can follow and like and dislike, and that's 10 things you can do with a profile. No, it's a completely generic foundation where anybody could now invent any protocol. So you could have now 10 competing follower systems. And then, some websites show this one, others show this one, and eventually one will win, and that will be the one that gains attraction. Or maybe there will be two that will win, and everybody uses those two. Somebody could build a, friend circle system or a, reputation of some sort. And so it's basically, once you have the blockchain as a foundation and the account, which is, the profile as a foundational building block that's extremely generic and very open, now we can build a decentralized social network where the whole world starts building on that network. Like everybody builds a piece, everybody can build a piece, and everybody can build a window into that network. That's a whole different play than us building one custom version and one website for it, and that's it. It's the same like Ethereum, where everybody can build whatever they want, and with all of these DeFi protocols, you can have different kind of windows into the same protocols, and then they can intertwine. And that's for the financial thing cool. But imagine you're doing this with humans. I mean, you can shape society as we know it, right?
Yeah, I saw an interesting thread, and I think you kind of bring me to a point here where, you know, putting power back in the hands of whatever users kind of want to build, and even for, you know, so having that fundamental level of standards that just allow for flexibility and, you know, anything that can be customized. I mean, I'm sure that you think about this all the time, where it's like there's probably stuff that's going to be built on LUKSO that you can't even imagine right now.
Most of it probably I will not be really aware of, you know. I mean, there's a lot of ideas that we have, and there's a lot of, but obviously you can take whatever we have right now, and what you cannot do really without blockchain is like the transactability. You can do things with zero knowledge proofs where people collude in a group, but you don't know exactly who are the members. You could do really funky stuff and really cool stuff. You know, you can obviously do voting, right? Uncensorable and unfakeable voting. I mean, you can do all kind of cool stuff once you have actually real identified people with a history that you can't easily stipple, you know, fake sock puppet faking, you know. So a lot of cool stuff can happen, but on the end, you know, most of the stuff that will happen, like, it's very hard to imagine. Same like before ERC20 and before even the ICO wave was not to be expected, that like everybody just now goes straight on making ICOs, and then after that everybody goes straight on, you know, inventing tokens that being created and destroyed and wrapped and unwrapped and doubled and tripled and halved and whatever, you know, people build in DeFi. I mean, it's hard to imagine this kind of crazy stuff, but here now we're doing it pretty much with society and with communities. I mean, co-living, you know, co-owning becomes totally a thing now, because you have now not random wallets that would show up at your house, but you have members that you can see, oh, this is this guy, he holds these tokens. Oh yeah, he has the same interest in me. You could block this based on whatever they hold, what they don't hold. They are identifiable. You can see maybe their posts that they're making, the friends they have, the trust score he has in a certain community. I mean, everything becomes hyper transparent, and on top of this, it becomes unfakeable, right? That's the thing right now. We trust the platform like Twitter or Facebook and the follower account, but that information can be completely arbitrarily manipulated, right? I mean, YouTube had also, you know, that they put view counts down on unpopular or politically incorrect videos and stuff. Like
shadow, I mean, shadow banning and everything else.
Yeah, I mean, very, very good example. Anybody who wants to see it, you want to watch, you search for the Putin interview on YouTube, it doesn't show up. It is there and has massive amount of views, but it doesn't show up in a search. That's kind of crazy, right? I mean, that's not obviously not an unbiased filter, right? If somebody has
interesting, if you think
it to be at the top, right? Yeah.
If you think about, you know, inherent transparency, and you think about data provenance, and, you know, kind of having kind of that root kind of trust in the data that you're seeing is actually correct and accurate, then it kind of gets really interesting of what you can do with compute, how you can manage data, and where certain portions of data will go out to, and what type of data is valuable, and then how you combine different subsets of data for
I mean, basically all the data that currently is available to a Facebook or to a Twitter on the back end is now then available to everyone, and everybody could build on it. So that is makes it very, like, you can do more transparent systems. And it's not about saying this guy is right or the YouTube video should be on the top or not. It's not about, you know, picking sides. It's about people choosing and being able to choose, right? That's important. And for example, you could build websites where people can just simply pick their algorithm, you know, create even their own AI-based filter algorithm, and now they get to see it the way they want to see it. Or like, can be open source algorithms, and people can just pick and choose which one they like better. So it's not anymore that, because each DApp becomes now only a window, and you can switch windows. And then some windows can be built so flexible that you can even switch the pieces of the window, meaning your feed algorithm and anything else. And suddenly things become a lot more modular and a lot more, you know, dynamic, and everybody can contribute building them. It becomes very much more open source collaboration, global open source collaboration. So it's not anymore a small group of people, even with the best intent, decides that, you know, this is now the way how people have to see it, you know, or this is the way, you know, like what accountant should be blocked because he's a bad guy and he's a good guy. And even if they have the best intent, you know, I mean, it's a very opinionated thing. And we can now build systems that work differently. Maybe they're going based on a voting system and a rating system, and manipulation goes away. because it becomes very hard to impossible if you build the right incentive mechanisms to manipulate on such an infrastructure. And honestly, this is really what excites me, to see these kind of things happen. You know, like that's the next level platforms of the internet we need, and they need the right foundation. That's number one.
I saw an interesting post or an interesting thread. Somebody was asking Vitalik for, you know, when account abstraction, things like that on Ethereum. And this really gets into, like, you know, how easy it is to make fundamental changes on within blockchains that have been around for a while. Are there bureaucracies in place that don't allow for pivots to be made? And then if you look at the other end of the spectrum, I saw your response that says it's literally been built. We took 5 years to build it. Can you maybe just, for our audience, maybe simplify what this means a little bit from a user experience standpoint, and what you guys have built in regards to kind of where that thread was going?
I mean, this was an interesting thread because, I mean, obviously, I explained Vitalik the idea about LUKSO and Aya, the director of the foundation, I think 3 years ago. But obviously, the standards were not fully built out. The chain was obviously not live. And we really wanted to initially go more for the lifestyle thing. So he didn't fully get it, and he didn't fully realize. I mean, obviously, we were talking about the creatives. That is the thing that happened then with the NFT wave, like 2 years after that. And our white paper is called The Blueprint for the New Creative Economy, which is literally fitting the whole NFT wave and everything else. So we kind of like pre-predicted that already, like by a year or two. But the smart contract account part, he hasn't fully understood yet, and I don't think he has ever really properly looked at it. So I just saw this as a chance. I mean, obviously, because we're all busy people, he is a busy person, I'm a busy person. My inbox is completely overspammed, you know. Sure. The points of contact that we had in the past were like different channels. They're all gone now, so I don't have his phone number anymore to call him up. But I mean, I just thought as a chance to like answer. And fun fact, like my answer tweet has more views now than his response tweet.
Yeah.
Which is kind of like a funny thing. But you're right. The biggest problem is that Ethereum is great, you know, and Ethereum is really innovating on the consensus level. But they have already a network effect. Things already went down a certain rabbit hole, right? And they're not going out of that rabbit hole. So now they need to pivot, and pivoting a large cruising ship is very different than pivoting a small speedboat, right? So LUKSO is, first off, a small boat, but second, it's also, we had the time to do it the right way. We had the time to really think those standards through, make sure they work in concert, make sure with all the different pieces that give more flexibility on the tokens, for example, or on your smart contract account, and how you manage it, and how it can react, and how you can extend it, and everything. So we took the time to think this through. And that is the advantage that LUKSO has, that it now has these right foundations. The disadvantage it has, it's new. So people need to learn about it. They need to understand it. Conceptually, most people always look for the private key. So they're getting confused because they're so used to, hey, I'm getting the public key back if I'm connecting to, where's my public key? And they want to have the public key. Yeah. The public key is irrelevant. You replace that thing, you know, when you switch your device. It doesn't matter anymore so much. So yeah, it's the learning. Yeah, people need to learn. But eventually, if you have the better foundations, you know, like if you have a car, then you can put the horse in front of the car for a while, but eventually you will realize it's better to just start the engine of your car. So, and it might be smart to not put the horse in the front. So this is the situation with LUKSO, that like we have now the better tech. People need to realize it's the better tech. It will eventually, you know, we will actually open this up to Ethereum and other chains as well soon. And then people can discover it there. Right now, when it comes to smart contract accounts, it's in the early days in Ethereum. It's a Gnosis safe, which is a multi-sig, and now they're thinking about how to make it modular and adding more pieces, but it's pretty early days. It doesn't even have the idea of attaching information yet, which is hyper critical for social stuff. Yeah, we are like kind of like a bit further ahead on that front. And it's not about, competing with Ethereum. The way I see it is Ethereum is kind of like Linux, it's like where like the bare innovation happens on the consensus level, and a lot of these things get tried out, like TeFi and the protocols and the pipes of, the digital economy. Gnosis, is another Ethereum network that's more like the payment system. They have Gnosis Pay, they have the credit card, it's cheap transaction fees and so on. And LUKSO is also an Ethereum network, full on, Ethereum. So any improvement that Ethereum does, LUKSO can take as well because it's the same tech, but it is fully social culture creators with the right standard building blocks for creating a social chain, for creating a chain for culture, and that could be seen as a little bit the Ethereum verse when it comes about layer ones, right? Yeah, and so it's more like, a brotherhood. One is a bit an older brother. The others are younger brothers.
Do you, I know you kind of briefly mentioned this, but when you look at smart contract accounts and what you guys have built already at the foundational level with universal profiles, once you open up once you open up the doors to Ethereum and EVM, is there, I guess it's a good problem to have, but is there, do you think that could be like a floodgates opening type thing once those doors are opened, or is there anything else that you're kind of waiting for to build in the background, or is it kind of just like, yeah, this is coming, kind of get prepared for it?
No, actually, the truth is most of the time, no matter what awesome shit you have, if you open up things, mostly nothing happens at first. As long as you don't make like a crazy marketing machine behind something, not much is happening, because people are not like sitting there waiting for something like this. They will take time to understand, right? They will take time to understand that this is big, that this is new, that's different. When it comes to Ethereum, I mean, there's an advantage of being on LUKSO, because on LUKSO, we have a transaction relay service. We actually subsidize the early accounts and we subsidize your transactions. So actually you have gas-free transactions, right? Number one. Second, you have all of these new token standards. They interact really well with your profile. They inform your profile. Your profile then automatically writes the addresses of received tokens and NFTs in its own profile. So you will have a decentralized portfolio and list of tokens that you have, and you know what you have. All of this, the advantages you lose when you go then to Ethereum and you have this profile, you have a profile on Ethereum, you have ERC20, doesn't inform your smart contract at all. You have the old world. So you get a lot of the benefits of permissions and you get the smart contract account benefits, but obviously there's no websites that really load your profile data. So on Ethereum you get a bit better version of an account that's a bit more gas expensive. On LUKSO you get literally the ecosystem that's made for it. The websites that identify you as a profile. You log into Universal Page, you are the same profile. You go to universalprofile.cloud, you are the same profile. You go to whatever other DM, you're the same profile. It loads your picture. It understands that you're a profile. So it's about the ecosystem. LUKSO is made for that. These standards, everybody's using them. Universal Swaps is fully LSP7 compatible, so it's using the new token standards. Nothing is there even compatible to the old ERC20 world anymore. I mean, what will probably bring a bit more the floodgates is when the bridge is opening. So we're currently working on a bridge that's zero knowledge proof based between Ethereum and LUKSO, together with Hashi and Hashi Alliance. And the cool thing about this is that because LUKSO is Ethereum and Ethereum is Ethereum, and there is a lot of zero knowledge proof verifiers for the Ethereum consensus, you can now make a bridge that verifies both LUKSO's and Ethereum's consensus, which is a big deal, because now you can make the most secure bridge you can imagine, because nobody can hack it if it's like zero knowledge proof verified on both ends. So then people can like bridge assets over and whatnot. But I think what I would like to see, and I think that would be the biggest driver for LUKSO, is when people understand that this is the foundational tech to build your next D app on. If you understand as a builder, this solves all the problems the space has been waiting for in terms of UX and in terms of like what you can do and how you can build apps that literally use the user's profile and account in some way, in a more meaningful way than just sending and receiving. So anybody who wants to have anything on a social level and wants to build it on the EVM blockchain, LUKSO is the place you should absolutely check out. Otherwise, you will regret it later down the road that you haven't.
So I would love, before we get into milestones and kind of looking to the future here, I just kind of one point, and this I think kind of wraps a bunch of different questions I could ask into one thing. What's your viewpoint on everything and everyone moving on chain in the future? I mean, actual mass adoption. And then from your standpoint through LUKSO, I mean, the core concepts that you guys have here are threefold, and it's identification, tokenization, and virtualization, which is, let me give my very remedial viewpoints and interpretation of this. Identification is like the provenance aspect, like actual identity of people, places, objects, whatever it might be. Tokenization is them actually coming on chain. And then virtualization is, which I think is missing a lot in this space. What can you do with tokenized assets that have provenance and identity after they're already on chain? Why are they on chain? What can you do with them? What environments can they go into? But so to kind of re-ask, does everything and everyone kind of move on chain in your envisionment in the future? And then how do the three core concepts that you guys have through LUKSO kind of tie in a meaningful way?
Yeah. On the one hand, I mean, let's divide it into two answers. I mean, one answer is, I mean, if you have a profile on a blockchain, it's an inherently public profile, right? I mean, you can have a profile that you don't put your name on it, you don't put a picture that can identify you in, and then you're like as anonymous as you're on Ethereum or any other EVM chains. But blockchains are inherently transparent, so transactions are visible, right? I mean, it's not the best place to hide your criminal activity, let's say. You know, that's not the place where you want to do it, I guess. It is inherently very transparent. You can build privacy tools on top of a universal profile as well, because you can attach any information. So you could even have, you know, other privacy things. There is obviously side chains you could build on LUKSO that are then zero knowledge proof based, which are super, you know, private. All of this kind of stuff can be built. When it comes to, so people need to understand that. So when you create a profile, it's mostly because you want to either be a creator and you want to be identifiable of some sort, you know, a brand or company or an organization or a DAO or a community, or you want to be a user that really likes also to collect, you know, and you know, likes to be part of something, and like that's why Facebook exists, right? Everybody posts their whole life in there.
Yeah.
On top of this, it is a blockchain. So I mean, as of now, blockchains do not forget. So you need to be smart about what you do, because it stays there for a while. And when you put your name behind it, it's pretty much, you know, visible. That's number one. So it's a bit of a different environment, and people need to learn that. They need to understand that this is a different kind of a profile. It's yours, right? But it sits on the blockchain. So when you log into a website, for example, with a universal profile, it doesn't you know, register this on chain. So that's a private activity between you and the website. You just sign a message. But when you're sending stuff around or you receive it, that's kind of on chain, right? So people need to be aware of these differences. When it comes to scale, everybody talks about the billion people on blockchain, blah, blah, blah. I mean, the truth is, our technology and that whole space has a limit in scale. That is right now the way it's designed. There's no unlimited scale of a blockchain, and no blockchain could house 1 billion users. It doesn't exist. Whoever believes that or says that is lying. So there's a limit of transactions per second you can make. Some chains do more. They're more centralized, mostly. Others do less. They're mostly more decentralized. Yeah? But what you can do is, and the question is then, when do you, for example, in a social interaction, when do you need the blockchain? I mean, if you're writing a blog post, for example, that's not written on chain necessarily. You write it into some distributed, you know, system, ideally, like Farcaster or like Blue Sky, that sends it out, and then you register the tree, the hash tree, the root, Merkle root of your messages in your profile, so people can say, oh yeah, he really did that, and it's then even signed by one of your keys. You can do that once a day. So you make one transaction for all the posts you made a day, or you make it once a week. You know, you don't need to do this for every transaction, for example, or every message that you send. If you send obviously tokens around, yes, that's a transaction on chain. But there's a lot of things you can do, and certain things don't belong on a chain, like a like, I guess, might not be necessarily useful on a chain. It's too cheap for too much gas, I would say. So it's really about, we can architecture systems that basically, and really scalable, very mass scalable apps that use blockchain to a certain degree. For example, for the identification, for your profile. maybe for certain aspects of your app, and maybe it's built in such a way that it batches and scales, and maybe it's uses a sidechain for certain other aspects of it. So now you can get to real scale while still having blockchain at the core. If you try to do everything you do on a blockchain, every every transaction, every message you write, I mean, obviously that will never scale ever, right? But the architecture is right, and if you do use a lot of different tools in concert, you could actually literally build a full-on hyper-scalable, decentralized, social network ecosystem. And so it needs the smart people, it needs those things to
I think kind of the final question I have for you today, and we certainly appreciate your time, is you guys have had some current milestones, notably LUKSO Foundation, the first kind of tranche and wave of grants on, I believe it was May 1st, 1 year mainnet anniversary. Can you maybe touch base? Is it coming up?
Oh, coming. It depends on when the video goes out. It hasn't happened by then, I guess.
If you could touch base on some of the current milestones that you guys have, kind of what you're most proud of within the ecosystem, and then looking to the future with milestones you expect to come out soon. You mentioned the bridge. I know a lot of people are really excited about the mobile app. So current milestones and what you're kind of excited about in the near term, and even looking forward out, that would be fantastic.
Yeah. So, I mean, what's coming up is obviously we will propose the DENCON hard fork for LUKSO. We're still kind of monitoring how this goes in Ethereum because there's a few debates here and there. So, fun fact: Ethereum is our testnet now. we benefit. Wow. We benefit really well from all the development. So thank you to open source. I contributed a lot of open source in the past too, so I think that's good. So that's one thing. The zero knowledge proof bridge is definitely something I'm very excited about, because the biggest problem with a bridge I had before was bridges are inherently very unsecure. You are really bound to the signing group and trust them forever with your asset unless you go back to the source chain. Zero knowledge proof bridges, you don't trust anyone anymore. You just trust the fact that their system will pass a message back and forth, but not anymore that anybody can manipulate it. So nobody can steal the money on the pots, right? They can just not transfer it. That's a big deal that I'm really looking forward to. The mobile app is something that is in the works, but building a full-on mobile app, we are sharing a lot of the code between the browser extension and mobile app, and we're focusing right now on the browser extension a lot because we want to get this really right as well, and then focusing more on the mobile app. But we're also exploring right now ways that we can actually add the browser extension to your mobile browser. And in fact, if you have an Android phone and you install the Kiwi browser, you already can use our browser extension on Android. It's not fully tested yet, so I'm not sure if everything works perfectly, but you can do it for the Android users. It actually does work. You can even create a profile yourself as well. But we're exploring these kind of routes. So the mobile aspect is really important, obviously. Ideally, also at some point, other players come in and make their own apps that can control your profile and interacting with the apps. It's not very difficult to do, really. If you have an existing wallet, making this profile compatible doesn't take a lot. It's at least in its basic form. We are really working on an indexer API, and we're working on a lot of developer tools so that people basically get to build faster DApps where they can, get all the token holders of a token or an NFT, or they can get all the tokens that you have and all the pictures and everything else. So lots of dev tools, that we are focused on. There's definitely a new website coming. The messaging and the look and feel needs to change. I think that's very important. It really has to be clear to people what we really truly are, which is a blockchain built for social. That's inherently in the standards and what they do. Let me think about what else. There's a lot of smaller announcements that we have. There's this different integrations that are happening all the time. They're happening all the time. If the best to follow is obviously LUKSO_IO on Twitter. That's the place where you can follow LUKSO. But if you really want to know what's going on around universal profiles, all the integrations, and the account that really is more active right now as well is ERC725 account, which is the Universal Profiles Twitter account that really talks about the text, the apps, and everything else that's happening in LUKSO. And obviously, if you want to try it out and you want to be like Genfinity and have a Genfinity profile, you can go to universalprofile.cloud and create yourself a profile. And then
the grant aspects as well, that's got to be exciting for you to kind of figure out, you know, like we mentioned before, there's probably a lot of stuff that, you know.
Oh, that would be exciting. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, we have the grants running. They're running until the 16th of June. You can apply for a grant. There's a $1 million in Lux in grants, but there will be actually every quarter another grant round coming. And if you really want to build something and you think you have what it takes, and also what people need to understand, building on LUKSO, if you come from Ethereum, Polygon, or anywhere else, building on LUKSO requires zero change for you. Your stuff works out of the box on LUKSO, and Universal Profile and the browser extension works out of the box with your D app, likely. It works literally like MetaMask, except that you don't get like a public key back. You get actually the profile smart contract address back. And you can do a transaction the way you do that on Ethereum as well. It's super simple. If you really want to get into the nitty-gritties of profiles and you want to build something cool on top of profiles, start with, you know, understanding how you read some data out of it and how you write some data in it. Everything else is then more sophisticated use cases that you can traverse down the road. It's not a lot to learn to just get started. But once you learn a bit more of the details, you will realize, oh my God, I can do plenty of more things that I couldn't even, you know, envision on Ethereum right now, because it was just so limited in with your EOA. There's nothing there, right, besides an address. So that's exciting. I mean, I'm very like looking forward to seeing what people come up with. I'm really also looking forward to the OGs from the past getting into LUKSO and the account abstraction and our standard on LUKSO. And then when they see the potential with the knowledge they have over the last few years, that I would like to see. Because a lot of things can go very crazy once people realize what they can build now. So looking forward to that, actually.
Awesome, Fabian. Well, we certainly appreciate your time today. I can't imagine how busy you are. So for those of you guys that listened in today, LUKSO, the blockchain for social, culture, and creators, learned some interesting stuff that you guys use Ethereum as a test net, which is pretty cool. Excited about the bridge aspects. No, but honestly, it's such a pleasure to be able to interview you. You're such a wealth of knowledge. And that being said, guys, thank you for tuning in. Appreciate it.